I was only 16 when this happened, but I still can't get the images out of my head. I remember the feeling of that night like it was yesterday. My parents had just left for their weekend getaway, and I was home alone, something I thought I had mastered by that point. At least, that's what I thought, until it all went wrong. It was a Friday evening. I had the entire house to myself, and I decided to do what I usually did, play video games and eat junk food. It was a typical night, or so I thought. As the hours passed, I felt the familiar stillness of the house settle in. My parents' absence had always been a mix of relief and loneliness, but that night, something felt off. Around 10 p.m., I started hearing sounds coming from upstairs. At first, I brushed it off as the house settling. It wasn't uncommon for the old wooden floors to creak and groan. But these sounds were different. It was like footsteps, slow, deliberate, as if someone was walking across the floor above me. I stood up from the couch, trying to shake the feeling of unease creeping into my chest. Probably just the wind, I told myself. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. I had grown up in this house and had never heard anything like this before. The footsteps continued, and I started feeling that familiar pang of fear. I grabbed my phone to text my mom, asking if she was back early. No reply. I texted my dad, and still nothing. I began to pace in the living room, trying to convince myself I was just imagining things, but the sound of those footsteps continued, growing louder, and they weren't stopping. I decided I couldn't just sit there. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, half hoping it would give me a sense of security. Slowly, I made my way up the stairs, each creak beneath my feet echoing in the silence. I reached the top, and that's when the door to my parents' room caught my eye. It was ajar. It had always been closed when they were gone. My heart raced, but I told myself it was just me being paranoid. I pushed the door open slowly, holding the flashlight out in front of me. The room was empty. Everything was as it should be. But as I turned to leave, I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. There, on the floor, was a footprint. It was wet and large, as though someone had just stepped into the room with muddy shoes. But how? No one had been there. I froze, the blood draining from my face. The footsteps had stopped. There was an eerie silence, like the house was holding its breath. And then a voice, soft and cold, like it was right next to me, whispered, "Sam, don't turn around." I couldn't even process what was happening. I just spun around, shining my flashlight frantically, but there was no one. I backed out of the room, the air thick with dread. The house felt alive with a sinister presence, something I couldn't explain. I ran back down the stairs and into the living room, slamming the door behind me. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I called my parents, but the call went straight to voicemail. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. What was going on? I didn't know, but it felt like I wasn't alone anymore. I stayed awake the rest of the night, glancing nervously at every shadow, every noise. When my parents finally got home the next afternoon, I didn't say a word. What could I say? I didn't want them to think I was crazy, but I couldn't forget what happened. And to this day, when I'm home alone, I can still hear those footsteps and that voice.
This story still haunts me, even though it happened years ago. I was 11, and it was the first time my parents left me home alone for more than a couple of hours. They had to go out for an event, and I was thrilled to have the house to myself. I thought it would be fun to watch my favorite show, eat junk food, and just enjoy the peace and quiet. But that night, things quickly took a turn for the worse. It was already dark when they left, and I was sitting in the living room watching TV. The house was unusually quiet, but I didn't think much of it. We lived in a nice neighborhood, and I always felt safe there. But then, around 9 p.m., I heard a soft knock at the door. I didn't think anything of it at first. Maybe it was just a neighbor or someone stopping by. I wasn't supposed to answer the door when my parents weren't home, but I figured it could be someone I knew. So I walked over to the door and peeked through the peephole. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was a man standing there. He looked ordinary enough, but there was something about him that didn't sit right. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. His hair was messy, like he hadn't bothered to comb it in days. But what really freaked me out was his eyes, wide and unblinking, staring directly at the peephole. It felt like he could see me looking at him. I stood frozen for a few seconds, unsure of what to do. I stepped away from the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Should I call my parents? Should I call the police? I didn't know what to do. But before I could make a decision, I heard the man speak. His voice was low and calm, but his words were unsettling. "Emma, I know you're in there." I froze. How did he know my name? I hadn't told anyone I'd be home alone. He knocked again, louder this time, then waited. I stood there in the darkness, barely breathing, hoping he would leave, but he didn't. "Emma, I know you're scared, but I just want to talk." I backed away from the door slowly, my mind racing. I tried to keep my composure, but I was terrified. I didn't know who this man was, and I had no idea how he knew my name. My parents' car was still gone, and there was no one around to help. I quickly checked all the windows, making sure they were locked, and then grabbed the house phone. My hands shook as I dialed my mom's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic set in. I called my dad, then my aunt, anyone I could think of, but still no answer. I couldn't stay in the house alone with this man outside. I moved to the back door and checked the lock, making sure it was secure. Then I went upstairs to my room, where I could see the entire front yard. I watched as the man started pacing back and forth in front of the door. His eyes never left the house. Hours passed. The knocking stopped, but I couldn't relax. I heard him whispering things to himself outside, like he was talking to someone who wasn't there. I stayed hidden in my room, too scared to make a sound, wondering if he'd leave if I just waited long enough. Finally, I heard the familiar sound of a car pulling into the driveway. It was my parents. I rushed downstairs, nearly tripping over myself in my haste to unlock the door. When I opened it, I didn't see the man anymore. He was gone, but the air felt heavy, like something bad had just happened. I told my parents everything, but they just brushed it off as my imagination running wild. They didn't understand how real it felt. Every time I'm home alone now, I always check the peephole before opening the door. And if I see anything out of the ordinary, I don't hesitate to call for help. That night showed me how quickly things can go from normal to terrifying, and I'll never let my guard down again.
I was 14 when this happened, and it still gives me chills just thinking about it. My parents were out of town for the weekend, and for the first time ever, I had the house to myself for a couple of days. I was excited at first. Free reign of the place, no rules for the next 48 hours. But that weekend turned out to be one of the scariest experiences of my life. It was late on the second night they were gone. I was up in my room playing video games, the usual way I spend my Friday nights. The house was eerily quiet, but I didn't think much of it. Our house was pretty isolated, surrounded by trees, and it often felt like the wind had a mind of its own. But that night, it was too quiet. Even the wind had stopped. At around 11 p.m., I took a break from the game and looked out my window. The streetlights outside cast a faint glow across the yard, and I could see the outline of the trees swaying gently in the breeze. But But then something caught my eye. At the corner of my field of vision, I noticed a shape, something standing in the shadow of the trees by the fence. It was tall, too tall to be a tree or a bush. It was standing perfectly still, and for a moment I thought it was just a trick of the light. But then I saw it move. I leaned closer to the window, squinting into the darkness. The figure shifted just slightly. I could see it more clearly now. A person, or what I thought was a person. They were standing too still to be human, almost like they were waiting for something. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I watched, unsure of what to do. I grabbed my phone and texted my parents, but there was no reply. It was like my message had vanished into thin air. I kept watching the figure, my heart pounding. The longer I stared, the more uneasy I became. It didn't move, just stood there, frozen in place, its head tilted slightly toward my window. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its eyes on me, like it was waiting for me to make a move. I wanted to call the police, but I was scared of what would happen if I moved. What if it saw me? I couldn't stop staring at it, hoping it would go away, but it didn't. After what felt like an eternity, the figure suddenly moved again. This time, it took a step toward the house. I backed away from the window, my breath catching in my throat. My body screamed at me to run, to hide, but I didn't know where to go. I couldn't take my eyes off the figure. It was coming closer. I grabbed a baseball bat from under my bed, something I thought might make me feel better if things went south. I stood by the door, ready to bolt, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. I crept down the stairs as quietly as I could, listening for any noise, any sign that something was wrong. When I reached the front door, I slowly peered out the window. The figure was standing directly under the streetlight now, just staring at the house. I saw its head turn, and I knew it was looking right at me. My stomach dropped, and I quickly shut the blinds, trying to calm my racing heart. I thought for sure that I was about to be attacked. I moved through the house in a daze, locking doors and windows, double-checking everything, but the feeling of being watched never left. I stayed awake the whole night, listening to every sound outside, every shift in the house, but the figure never came any closer. The next morning, when my parents came back, I told them what happened. They didn't believe me. They said it was probably just a neighbor or someone walking by, but I knew better. I knew what I saw. I kept thinking about the way the figure stood, so still and unmoving, like it wasn't alive, but waiting for something. To this day, whenever I'm home alone, I can't look out that window without feeling a sense of dread. The idea that someone or something was out there watching me still haunts me. I'll never forget the feeling of being watched, of seeing that figure standing there in the darkness, waiting.
This happened when I was 13, and to this day, I can't be alone in my room without checking the closet, just to make sure. My parents had left for a weekend getaway, and I was used to being alone for a night or two. But that night, it was different. It started out just like any other time I was alone. I watched some TV, ate a snack, and spent the evening in my room doing homework. Nothing out of the ordinary. But as the night wore on, things started feeling off. The house seemed to get quieter, almost unnaturally so. I could hear every creak of the floors and every gust of wind rattling the windows, but in between, there was a silence that felt like something was waiting. Around 9:30 p.m., I decided to go to bed. I turned off the lights, crawled under the covers, and tried to sleep, but I couldn't. There was something about the quiet that was making me uneasy. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep to come. But my mind kept racing. Then I heard something, a soft, faint rustling sound. It was coming from the closet. I lay there, completely still, my heart beating loudly in my ears.
It was probably just the wind, I told myself, but the sound kept going. It wasn't the wind. It sounded like someone was moving around inside the closet. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe. My room was dark, but the faint light from the streetlights outside made it just bright enough to see shadows shifting in the corners. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe a jacket had fallen off the hook. Maybe it was just the house settling. But it didn't feel like that. The sound was deliberate. Someone was in the closet. I couldn't ignore it anymore. My body was frozen in fear, but my mind was racing, trying to think of what to do. Should I run? Should I call my parents? I didn't have a phone of my own at the time, so I couldn't even text them. My only option was to leave my room and go down the stairs. But if someone was in the closet, could they be in the hallway too? I finally forced myself to get out of bed. I moved as quietly as I could, trying not to make a sound. When I reached the closet door, I stood there for a long time, my hand resting on the handle. I didn't want to open it, but I had to. I took a deep breath, counted to 3, and pulled it open. There was nothing there. No person, no movement, just the empty clothes hanging from the rod. I sighed in relief, but something still didn't feel right. It was too quiet now, too still. I closed the closet door and went back to bed, trying to convince myself it had been my imagination, but the feeling of being watched never left. It wasn't until a few minutes later that I heard it again, a sound, this time louder, right next to my bed. The closet door creaked open by itself. I looked over, and that's when I saw it. A figure, tall and thin, barely visible in the dark, was standing in the doorway of the closet. Its face was obscured by shadows, but I could see the outline of a man, his body stiff and unmoving. I couldn't make out any features, just the sense that it was watching me. It didn't say anything, didn't move, but I knew it was there, waiting. I screamed. The figure didn't move, but the closet door slammed shut as if something had pushed it with all its might. I ran out of my room, down the stairs, and locked myself in the bathroom. I stayed there, terrified, until my parents came home the next morning. When I told them what happened, they checked the house. They found nothing, not even a sign of someone breaking in. But I knew what I saw. I knew what I heard. The figure in the closet wasn't just a nightmare. It was real. And even though I never saw it again, I can't shake the feeling that it's still out there, waiting for the next time I'm alone.